All right, good to start? Well, welcome. We're going to talk a little bit today about faculty-led MTSU Education Abroad programs, and it really is designed as a workshop. I'll run around the room real quickly and let you guys introduce yourselves. I'm David Schmidt, the Vice Provost for International Affairs. This is Ms. Katie Kovar, the Director of the Office of Education Abroad. And I've asked a faculty member, because I think it's really going to be more beneficial for you guys to talk to someone and ask questions of someone who's been doing it now for 4 years, John? Two programs, but 3 years kind of up and running. Dr. John Wallin will talk to you guys about his UK program. So, want to run around the room real quickly?
So hi, I'm Vanessa Leffler. I'm in the Department of Business Finance.
I'm John Wallin from Physics and Astronomy. I'm Raj from Marketing Department.
Hi, Cheryl Ward, also marketing. Diana Houston, also marketing.
The marketing group.
Digital journalism.
I'm Kaya Farr from the Marketing.
I'm Joe Morgan. I'm from the School of Music.
Kathy Boudreau, I'm from Ed Leadership Library Science.
And Deanne Luck from the same
Library Science.
Great. I'll talk a little bit about just the concept of education abroad, the types of programs that we have. Obviously, there's for those of us who are kind of old-timers, it's the semester and the full year. Those are really dinosaurs now. The vast majority of students nationwide are partaking in faculty-led short-term summer programs. Some are doing winter term, some are doing spring break term. 79% of our students are doing summer. So 79% of MTSU faculty are doing these types of programs, the summer programs. When I came here 5 years ago, it didn't take me long to kind of understand the demographic and the type of student we're dealing with. They will follow our faculty, you guys, overseas. And so we designed these programs called MTSU-Signature programs. There's many different ways to approach them, but they're basically you saying, I'm going to take a course and take it abroad. And it really starts with kind of brainstorming with me, establishing a budget, and then we'll go through all the other specifics. But when I came here, we had three. There were three programs where faculty were leading students overseas. This year, the IEEC had a proposal of, I think, 42 different programs. So it really has been this wonderful thing of me pitching this and faculty responding, saying, yeah, I can do that. These are just some of the signature programs that we've had in the last year, 2 years. Cuba actually was a winterim program, and then we did have a summer program also through foreign language. Italy, England, France, Taiwan, Costa Rica, Israel, Mexico, Ireland, Honduras, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Norway, Vietnam, Dominican Republic, Finland, China. And just this last summer, we finally added two wonderful new programs, one in Senegal, so we got Africa, and we did Dubai. We did Dubai as well through Concrete Industry Management. So that was really fantastic, and those programs ran. These signature programs are basically this. They're university supported. My office and, of course, Katie's office. We assist with the design of the program, and it really is a bunch of brainstorming. I asked John to remind me of this. John came to my office. We sat down. He talked to me about this, and it was really kind of interesting. He knew exactly where he wanted to go. And then I said, okay, fine. If you're not comfortable, right now, just leading those students, you better get over there and do all the logistics. And he said, oh, by the way, I am going to Oxford. And I said, extend your stay another 7 to 10 days or something like that. And then we funded that. Katie's office provides student scholarships. We assist with the marketing of the programs. We provide the pre-departure, the post-programming, faculty and student orientation and debriefing. And in particular, we provide the specific faculty orientation. So just before all the programs leave, John can vouch for this, I meet with the faculty end of April, beginning of May, and we talk about how you guys can protect yourselves. We have the huge meeting with all of the students mid-April, and we kind of give them the lecture about what they can do and what they can't do. But then I also talk with you as faculty of how to protect yourselves. Really what you do is you set an appointment with me. 4:30, beer is a really wonderful way to talk to me. John knows that as well. Select a location, a time, when, and for how long, and of course, the purpose. All right? You design the programs, the logistics. Katie's going to be handing out a little...
I just handed out.
Oh, you handed it out. The handbook.
Has more information on it.
You design the programs, the logistics, the budget, and really, the budget, that's my area of expertise. So setting up the budget and knowing the price point, the faculty to talk to. And then, if you're thinking about the summer of 2018, this is when you guys should be in the kind of brainstorming stage. Because the submission for the proposal has to be submitted the September prior to the program taking place. So it would be September of 2017 for the summer of 2018. All right?
And it's early September. So over the summer, we're happy to assist with any questions
Yeah.
that you have or putting that proposal together.
The more unique the program, the more I love it. So if you want to do like a co-taught course with a different discipline, fantastic. And I'm very frank. I will tell you that will not work with our students. There's a certain price point where, you know, we've had faculty that are convinced that, no, I know it's $6,500, but I can sell this. No, you can't. You can get students to come into a room, 65 of them saying, I really want to go. But what is the difficult point is collecting money from them. And if you don't get a minimum of 8, your program, for the most part, will not go because then we cannot pay you as a faculty member over the summer. 8 is the minimum number. Okay? So I'm going to be quiet, sneak away, and let John come on up and talk about the insider's view of establishing the signature program. Katie, anything you have to add?
Not at the moment, but I'll send it.
All right. I'll set this up for you, John. Awesome. Leading, right?
That's it. Awesome.
All right, sir. There you are.
Cool.
Yep.
So again, I'm John from County, and I think on my third trip over, but first of all, I want to show my students last summer. So the thing that you notice is that they're all smiling. And this was pretty much the whole trip. So I had a great group last summer. We're actually at Civil and Radio Observatory in England. I do a history of astronomy in England. So we do. Oh, sorry. Darn it. I know. Okay. So I do history of astronomy in England. So we do 5,000 years of history along with the connection to science. I guess the thing I want to start with is, why do this? Because it is a lot of work. There's no way around that. You're going to spend a lot of time on this. The fact that you have to propose in September and they're giving you a 6-month workshop ahead of time indicates something about the planning that's going to go on. The thing that I would say is that study abroad fundamentally changes the way students view the world, themselves, their culture, everything. Most of the students you're going to take with have never been overseas. They have no idea of what things are like beyond Kentucky. Maybe they've been to Florida, but that's about it. Almost nobody that goes on these trips has been overseas. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what to think. They think that everything in the United States is done this way because that's the way it's done. So and just bringing them to another country and letting them look at an electrical outlet that has 3 prongs and 240 volts changes the way that they view technology, culture, all the things that we do, that some of the decisions we make in society are arbitrary. The overall objectives for my course, despite everything that I've told them, is the world is big, the world is old, and you can travel in it. Okay, that's the big things I want to teach them, right? They learn, I think, more in 2 weeks in these courses than they can do in a conventional classroom. I would put up all the things that we cover in 2 weeks and put that up against a full semester course and do the testing afterwards, and I think we would see that. It's immensely fun to do, but it's also challenging. Here's the things from my point of view about what I think you have to do. And the handouts have all this stuff, so don't try writing a huge amount of notes down. Developing the trip, you have to kind of make a framework of why you want to do it. You have to kind of make a plan. You have to estimate costs. You have to do pre-approval. And then you have to do recruiting students. And then there's the pre-trip activities. After you've recruited students, you got to get them to make the payments and give you money. Well, give the university money. You have to do bookings. You have to do logistics. And then you have to meet with students as well and get them ready. And then you have to lead the trip, which is, again, the fun part. And then there's post-trip meetings and post-trip paperwork you have to do. So the first thing to start with is what are your educational goals and objectives? Why do you want to take them overseas? How would visiting another country enhance or change these goals? So I teach an introductory astronomy course that has 182 students in it. That's not the course I want to teach when I'm overseas, right? If I'm going to some other place, I want to take advantage of the fact that I'm in England and talk about the historical context of science and talk about how things were influenced by culture and science and how science influenced culture and vice versa. So I want to do something different than what I'm doing in my classroom. And I want to take advantage of the fact that I'm in this place to do it. And the other thing that you come to is, what do you want them to learn and what do you want them to experience? So just as some examples of that, this is, again, on the trip, this is an activity that we did that was a printing workshop. So we did a lot of discussions about the history of writing, going from stones to cuneiform to papyri to paper to printing to current modern electronics. So one of the things we did was a printing workshop. This was a hands-on workshop about typesetting, and everybody got a chance to do this and see how a printing press worked, and it really fit in nicely with the things we're doing. But the thing we're doing is a very hands-on activity. Now, I did not make this up. I took advantage of the fact that there was a workshop on printing at Oxford that I could go to. So the Oxford University Press had that. I just booked it. And I don't have to be an expert at everything that I'm doing. I can actually have other people on site to help me with this. This is another example of an activity. So we're at the history of, it's a science museum in Oxford, which is basically a history of science museum. And what people are looking at here is an astrolabe, which was used for telling time and making measurements, and mostly telling time at night. So it would allow you to tell what time it is by looking at the stars, and also do computing, like when sunrise is going to occur and other things like that. So it's kind of the modern version of an iPhone. Okay, but this particular astrolabe was owned by Queen Elizabeth I. So you come to this question about what in the world is Queen Elizabeth doing with an astrolabe? And the answer is really interesting. It comes into, well, first of all, it's a gift you'd give to a person that's intelligent, and it was a gift. It was actually a gift from a suitor. And this makes it a lot more personal and real than saying, okay, astrolabes were used in the 1300s for telling time at night. This is a very different story. So showing them things and bringing them to things and bringing them to activities beyond museums, beyond workshops. The other picture that I was going to put in was actually people that are going through a burial chamber. That's something that, again, I could describe what burial chambers were like in the 3,500 BC, or I could take them into that one. And that's a completely different understanding of what you get. So thinking about the activities you want to do and how it fits together, if you're going to just do classroom lectures, that's probably not the best use of an Education Abroad course. Doing that with group activities and site, that might be necessary, but it shouldn't be the only part, right? Doing things that involve group activities and group site visits or hands-on or small group exploration, and how do you deal with meals? I mean, meals are an opportunity to learn as well. You can have discussions at meals. So figuring out how you do that with visits with locals or service activities, and are you going to do one city or multiple cities? And there's all these things you want to think about when you're putting this together. And I don't have an answer about how that's going to fit into your program, but you have to kind of think about the context that you're going in and what you want to do to take advantage of the place that you're going to be visiting. When you make a plan, so this is like 2 days of the plan. So we arrive at Heathrow, we go to Regent's University to stay over, we do a quick campus tour, we have a quick recovery time. This is when we're arriving from Heathrow. We go to the Tower of London, we do a walking tour downtown, we go to St. Paul's Cathedral for an evensong service, we eat dinner, and you have to kind of plan this out, for all the activities during the day. And, it's pretty heavily scheduled. We do have free time built in some places, and we try to have some flexible time. So, like lunch is, a 2-hour block here. That's way more than we need for lunch, but people need a little bit of downtime as well. So just an example of what that's like. That's hard to do, and it's hard to think about, but the thing you have to start doing is filling in what things you want to be doing. Almost on a half-an-hour basis during the time that you're there. And at least that helped me for this. And by the way, I have a helper on this. My wife does a huge amount of help with logistics and planning. She goes on the trip because if she didn't, she would divorce me. So, it's really important to understand that. We pay for her separately, by the way. That comes out of my money. It doesn't come out of the university's money or the students' money. That's on my dime. But like I said, she's immensely helpful because I couldn't do all the logistics on this just by myself, because it's a pretty complex course. We got 3 or 4 cities, and we do all sorts of things, and just the amount of things with buses and coordination and everything is interesting. We'll just show you this. This is a kind of the overall spreadsheet for everything. And the first thing I want to note is that you got to think about the costs in terms of housing, in terms of meals, in terms of whatever transportation you're doing in the city or around the cities. You can think about whether you want to include airfare in that. Mine doesn't, actually, so this doesn't include airfare. Yeah.
How long was this trip?
This was 13 days, 14 days, yeah. So this is just the costs for the time in the country, okay? And then, if you have admissions, you have to include that because that's kind of a separate item. And there's miscellaneous things that you have to think about too. And some of them are going to be things that the students are going to have to pay, that just don't fit into these categories. So there's kind of an art form to that. This is a weird thing to think about when estimating the cost, but it matters because actually the mix of the number of students matters. And if you have even numbers of men and women, you can put 2 in a room. And if you have odd numbers, that changes the cost. So you got to kind of be aware of that. So I actually have my spreadsheet where you can recalculate. The exchange rate. Anybody know what the exchange rate is going to be in the UK in July? Yeah. So you put a number in and you make sure it's higher than what you think it's going to be and you hope for the best, right? So you want to put a conservative number in. This is total cost, and then you have the additional cost for the instructor. So one of the things that you're going to do when you're planning this, and I don't want to get into all the details because the book will help you with this, is you got to think about your airfare and your miscellaneous expenses and the other things that are associated with your costs. That has to go in the cost as well. And then you come up with a grand total, and my cost, the number I'm coming up with for how much the trip's actually going to cost this summer, it's about $2,000 per student. Now, I'm asking for $2,500 per student, and I advertise at $2,800 per student. So I want to make sure that I have a buffer in there so I don't go over. The way you can really, really piss your dean off is going over budget. I never do that. Never do that. So some thoughts about the scheduling. First of all, take advantage of the local expertise. You do not have to know everything about the country you're going to. You don't have to know everything about everything you're doing. You have to have a good overview, but when you come down to doing the tour of Stonehenge, it's okay to use somebody that knows more than you do. Just include that as an expense in the trip. Be careful about overscheduling and underscheduling. You don't want people to get bored, but you don't want people to be so exhausted that they can't think. Consider how the trip activities fit together in a larger narrative. So I'm doing history, so I'm actually trying to go in reverse historical order because that kind of makes sense. It kind of works, kind of doesn't work. It works for some things, not for others. And think about how to prepare your students for the experience. With pre-trip meetings, you can get them ready for the trip more than you can just while they're there. Always go a bit high in exchange calculations. Include your costs. Contact the vendors early. Because you want to find out if you're staying in a hotel when they're going to need payment. One of the things that's surprising to me about this is so my first deposits for traveling in May 12th were due in December. So you have to have money in December, at the end of December, to pay for things that are showing up in May. They want 6 months in advance bookings. So you got to be aware that if you're going to, especially a tourist season, that's going to be a real issue. First deposit deadline, you want to do that at the end of the fall semester. You're going to want to think about deposits early on, and you want to get their money, and you want to make sure they understand it's non-refundable. I had a person that wanted to join my class yesterday. I still can get them in, but I'd much rather have the money ahead of time and know that they're going to be going. That's rare, and it should be rare. Yeah, there's a cost issue that's kind of tricky just in general. If you book places yourself, it's going to be a lot cheaper than doing, through a company or doing through some other thing, but it's a lot more complicated. So you're going to spend a lot of time talking to vendors on Skype and other things to make it work. So just kind of be aware of the trade-off. When you get all this done, you're going to apply for pre-approval, and you're going to be working with Dr. Schmidt a lot on this. You have to kind of think about what you're going to be doing and think about how it's going to fit in. Recruiting, so marketing. We have marketing people here, so you can tell me how to do this because I don't know. Marketing is hard. You're looking for 10 students out of the 21,000 students to go along with you on the trip, right? So you're marketing for 1 in 200, 1 in 2,000, actually 1 in 2,000. That you're trying to reach. So trying to figure out how you reach them with posters, brochures, Goodyear blimp, whatever works, is tricky. So, if you're doing something for just your majors, it might be a little bit easier, but I'm trying to market as a general education course. So it's a little bit harder to do that, but it's a broader audience too. So, it's a trade-off with that. Recruiting's hard. It's hard and it's stressful because you don't know, until you get that 8 students, you don't necessarily know if you're going to be going or not. So it's a little bit of a trick there to make that happen. Once you have and they're going to go through a pre-approval process to make sure their GPA is okay and they're not known felons, which is really important. You're going to want to interview them, and you're going to want to talk to them and say, hey, you're signing up for this course. You got to pay me some money on December 15th, okay? And you're going to pay money for this, but you also have to pay tuition. You also have to pay airfare. You have to get a passport. You have to pay the education abroad fee, and you have to go through and let them know what the costs are going to be. Because if you don't do that, you don't want them to be on the trip and say, well, I thought tuition was included on this. And this happened last year. And we almost had a situation where we almost sent a student home because he didn't sign up for my course, despite all the things I told him. Thinking about pre-trip meetings and what they're going to be doing. So I'm going to be meeting with my students starting next week to get them ready for the trip. And the academic requirements, what are you going to do for the academic part where, reflection papers, pre-departure papers, journals, assignments, projects, service, what are the things that are going to go on the trip that you're going to be grading? And think about pass-fail versus grades as well. There's some advantages of each one. The advantage of grades is that if somebody starts screwing up, you can actually start taking that out of their grade, and they won't like that, but it might help them with behavior. You got to file for a travel authorization. I don't want to go into this too much because it'll gets down to weeds pretty quickly. You have to create a payment form. There's an example payment form in the back of the handout there where they bring this to the one stop and they give money and they check a box and then you want to be able to check and make sure that your payments are made, and you can use Banner Financial for that, which is just really fun. Everybody loves Banner Financial. So.
If you apply for a program and it's approved to kind of go ahead with it, then we have another workshop
at
the beginning of October for those who are
Yeah.
going to be doing it. We talk about all of this stuff in really
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is way early for that. So.
But I mean, at least it's something to be well aware of. But
Yeah.
we will go over this stuff in detail once you've been approved of by IEC.
Yeah. And the suggestion I have is to make friends with people at the business office. Ben Jones, just go make friends with him because he's a great guy and he is very, very, very helpful. Learn about the eternal mysteries of the W8BEN form. I don't want to spoil that for you, but use invoices if possible to do payments. And there's going to be issues with international wire transfers. They always actually take the fee out on the receiving side, so you've got to have your vendors add some additional money in so that they're overpaid rather than underpaid. I want to talk more about the student stuff just a little bit. Getting students to know each other before the trip, I think, really matters. So I want them to actually be friends before they leave and to know me before they leave. So they're used to my sense of humor, used to my quirkiness, and so they have an idea what to expect. So the pre-meetings have that purpose. But also preparing them the trip with lectures and activities, getting them to think about the trip a little bit is really good. Getting them to understand where we're going to go. And I'm doing history of England. Most of them don't know anything about the history of England. So getting them to understand the context and how things work is very helpful. And reinforcing the expectations. On my trip, a big thing is walking. So we're walking, easily 15,000 steps a day. And people are used to walking 3,000 or 4,000 steps a day, and that's a big surprise, right? I had people that had some serious issues, some things about safety. Reinforcing the no cell phones policy. I do not let my students use cell phones during any class activities. If it's an emergency, yes, but they're not getting on social media and posting a picture of Stonehenge in Facebook while they're there. They can use it for a picture. That's fine. I don't want them texting. I don't want them doing any of that stuff because it detracts from the group dynamic. So. And then thinking about the behavior standards you're going to have. Cell phone's one thing, but what other things you want to think about? Leading the trip when you're actually on the trip, you got to prepare yourself for the trip. You got to think about what you want to do and what your plan is, and coming up with reinforcing the expectations from day one and holding people to the expectations in terms of behavior and timing. You don't want people showing up late the first day and not having consequences for that. Keep a receipt for everything you ever do. Make a plan. Realize the plan's not going to work. and eventually adapt. And here's the important one: try not to lose too many students. That's really important. So, and the key thing is semper gumby. Appear to be calmer than you actually are. Okay, because things are going to go wrong. I mean, it's going to be okay though. You're not, you're not going to Antarctica. Well, you might be. Okay, probably you're not going to Antarctica, but you're going to a place where you'll be able to adapt. You've been there before. You've done things there. It's going to be okay. Worst case is you're going to have to figure out what to do for the next couple hours. If a bus is late or if there's something, you're going to have to adapt. So that's okay. That's what happens. Just don't panic. Just make sure that everybody understands everything's going to be okay, and people will adapt to it. I'm not going to talk about keep a notebook, but that's basically the things I wanted to say. Is that this is really fun, but it involves some preparation and planning. So, sure. So yeah. So what questions do you guys have? Yeah.
You talked a lot about the things that you can do ahead of time to avoid a lot of pitfalls. But I guess now that you've done this a few times, what are the mistakes that you made?
Oh, what are the mistakes I made? Oh gosh. Let me think. So the first time I did this, I didn't have a cell phone policy in place. That was stupid. It's just stupid. I didn't realize how bad of an idea it was till I got there. And then everybody was texting all the time. And then the other one is people wanted to, so I had people that wanted to watch movies all the time. Right? So we're in York, which is one of the nicest cities in England. Half my group, it's free time. Half my group is going out and enjoying the city, going dancing, having fun, not drinking, because they're not doing that. So I'm sure of that, yeah. I told them, I don't know, but the other half is in the room watching Game of Thrones videos on the computer. And I'm just wondering what is wrong with them. I really didn't know what was wrong with them. So I think that's one of the things, is getting them prepared for the expectation. Also preparing them for the walking. Making sure they really understand that. They don't believe me when I tell them it's 15,000 steps a day. They think, oh, we're going to do that once and I'll be really tired that day. No, every day. And they just don't understand that. So making sure they understand the expectations of the trip is really good. My group last summer was so great. I had no issues with them at all. The first year there was a couple people that were just kind of unhappy, and that it was a little bit annoying to have them on the trip. I had 2 people that I could have really drowned by the end of the trip. But this last year, when they left, it was really strange because I had fun with them. I mean, it was like I had 9 people following me around England. It was very odd. But when they were gone, I kept looking back, and they weren't there. It was very strange. But I enjoyed their company. So that was great. I think if you can identify people that are potential leaders in your group, kind of cultivating that is nice too.
Can I follow up?
Yeah. Please.
From our vantage point, of all the programs that are proposed, not all of them will go. And I think the biggest mistake that faculty make is knowing when to pull out. Because what will happen is, John's got his all confirmed now, but we have an awful lot of faculty members that will go up to mid-April, and we tell them, if you don't know by the end of February, forget it, because we see students they'll game the faculty against the scholarship and their Hope Scout and all that stuff and say, well, I'm sorry, I don't have the money. Well, if you tell them that mid-April, they're left with saying, the program is going to go with 7, but I can't pay you, or we can prorate it, or you're going to have to come up with an additional $800 to take care of that person's fees, which were spread over 9 people. It's really a mess. And the other mistake I've seen a lot of faculty make is they don't properly vet the students. They're so desperate to get that minimum of 8 so they can say go. It takes one kid to take up all of your time and destroy it for the rest of the students, who then say, hey, I paid for this program. I paid for this course to go to the UK. And we've got this psychotic kid. And we have, trust me. Students have more problems than they did years and years ago. And you have to really vet them. John has a lot of pre-departure meetings, so he knows if there's going to be a red flag on him.
Yeah. Yeah, and getting to know the students ahead of time really matters. I think that's something I did better the second time as well. By doing a lot of activities ahead of time, they they start getting to know each other, and you want to try to avoid cliques if you can. And if you start seeing it, you want to break it up and make sure that the group is really flowing. That matters, because the first year people fell into cliques pretty quickly, and I didn't like that, because you ended up having a group of people that just fell into watching videos. I didn't understand that at all. It was the fact that you're not enjoying the fact you're in another country, that was deeply bothered me, I guess.
And still are.
Oh yeah, I look at those people, I can't figure out why they went. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
There should be. I mean, we have a template for an application. You should think of it like this. It is your course. Oftentimes, faculty will get a bit confused and ask me for curricular advice. I provide the logistics of where you go. You control the course. I have nothing to do with the curriculum. We will suggest the contact hours, but I think as John has clearly demonstrated, you will have more than your 37.5 contact hours for 3 credits. You will exceed that times 5. Because every opportunity to eat together, to be on the plane, is a teaching moment, so to speak. But yes, you should have an application. You should set a minimum GPA. You should interview them. You should find out. It's not just who gets the money to be with the faculty.
Yeah.
And if it's your first year, if you get 8, you get the same salary as if you take 16. John, you would never dream of taking 16.
I would never take 16.
Especially if your wife isn't there, right?
I would never take 16.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
we couldn't get into a lot of the places we go to if we had that many students. I mean, there's just no way.
All these, there's some faculty that will have these dreams of, well, I'm taking 20 of them. Why? Imagine having 20 children, taking them on a trip. Even 8,
8's, yeah.
Somewhere and you're like, with their stomach, who's missing that? I can't think of that person. And they show up.
Well, and as you're going through, London Underground, and you have 9 people with you, and there's 8 million people in the Underground at the same time, you're trying to navigate between trains. You've got to think about that and figure out how you're going to go back and forth. And if you start having a bigger group than that, it starts getting really tricky. But when you start, again, if you start enforcing this responsibility to take care of each other and watch each other, it really helps.
Yeah. Here's a short question for David then. On this, in this magical world in which I construct a class that's so popular, that I do need to reduce students, could we have a conversation then about, from a university perspective, what are fair and just, defensible reasons to exclude a person from a class? Because that's one thing, for most students, when they're signing up for a class, if they sign up for it, you can't be rejected from a class.
But these you can, and I think what you do is, the first year you get 8, and you say, it's going to be such a wonderful program, they're going to want to promote it through Facebook and through the study of Education Abroad fair and things like that. And then it can become this kind of prestigious program where you can earn both of them. I mean, obviously, money's going to, if they can't come up with the money, they can't go. But I think you do have to screen it, because during the summer, we stay here, and we are kind of the home base that keep in contact with the faculty. But John, I know there was a physical problem with one of the students during walking last year, and you and I maintained contact. And there are always disciplinary issues, and we have a protocol for verbal warning, written warning, and then they Skype with me, and then they're kicked out of the program. I mean, it's about protecting you as a faculty member, because when parents get involved, it's nasty. It's your word against the parents, and the parents and the students are always right.
John, what is the actual course that you mentioned? General education? I'm looking at the time.
Yeah, so we do astronomy 3050, which is special topics in astronomy. Okay, and what we do is the department will say, hey, we know this isn't a general education course, but we write a letter to the advisors saying that we can substitute this for astronomy 1030. So we're using the departmental permission to consider it the equivalent of the astronomy 1030. And the advantage of doing that is that it really isn't astronomy 1030, right? So it's a different course. But also for students that are interested in upper level credit, it does count for that as well. So it's kind of hitting 2 different audiences.
Well, in many respects, it's even more general education.
Yeah, it is.
Your normal class.
It is, but the trouble is, getting a separate approval on it would involve going through General Education Committee and then establishing a new number. And
I mean, I could say I've had no problem writing that substitution form for that class. So.
Yeah.
Except for I one time wrote down astrology instead of astrology.
Yeah. You make me sad.
Substitution form is really tedious.
Yeah, it is.
But to give you guys an idea of just the general mood regarding education abroad here at the campus, I hope you know that our provost leads an education abroad program. One of our deans leads the program with him. We have an associate dean in business that runs a program. Several chairs are leading programs. It's really, you guys are kind of the Marines, the few, the proud. But it's an amazing thing. You get this feeling of the faculty will come back, and I know it's tiring, but then John starts prepping for 2018.
Well, the thing that was interesting, like the first year, I kind of came back and I was like, I had a couple students that were a little annoying, and it took me a couple of weeks before I was willing to commit to go back again. But with the students I had last year, I was ready to go back. I would have kept working with them for another couple months. I mean, I really enjoyed the interactions with them. It was a good mix of students. In my case, I had a bunch of different majors. So I had some science majors, some non-science majors, some people that were doing art, some people doing economics, some people, it was a just nice, wonderful mix of people. And that added to it. It added to the discussions. And I don't know exactly, if I could figure out how to capture that dynamic reliably, I would sell it in a bottle. It was fantastic. So
how much scholarship money is actually available? I mean, if you have students who are really interested but don't have the money, how likely is it that they can?
They're going to have to pony up some money. There's no doubt. One of the most annoying things that Katie and I encounter is when they give tours around campus and we leave Tech Hall and we hear this ambassador telling a flock of kids and their parents that this is where study abroad is, and most students can study abroad for free because there's so much money. There isn't so much money. The students that are going abroad for a full year and a semester get more. But the summer students, the application deadline was just last week, and some students will write a paragraph. And, the committee's not going to give them anything. It really depends on the students. It depends on the faculty member encouraging the students to write. But if it's a $3,000 program, say top dollar, you get $1,000, right? So you're going to have to come up, that's what Graham and Grandpa are for, that's what summer jobs are for. In my experience, it's not that the students don't have the money. They do. And right for the summer programming, if they're including it in 6 credits, they can apply.
They can use their financial aid.
They can use their financial aid. It's really about prioritizing things. And committing to things is really what it is about. It's really about being prioritizing. So that's why you've got to get them to commit early in December. I'm going to stand up then, so there's not a blank person.
I have a pragmatic question about keeping costs down. When you set up the program, I saw in Regents University, are you just cold calling people? Can I rent a dorm?
So yes, I mean, so again, the first year I actually had a chance to go to a bunch of different places because they had paid for me to do 7 days kind of in the sites where I volunteered. And so we use lots of things. So we go online, we look at hostels, we look at hotels, we look at dorms, and so we're going online to find out what's available. So Regents University actually does a lot of international programs. It turns out they're very close to go. We can't go there this year because they're still in term this year. We're going 1 day different, but it turns out the term's only a week later for them. So that's not going to work for us. So in this case, we're going to a hotel in London. So which hotel? Well, you go on to Expedia and you start looking at hotel reviews and finding out the cheap goes this way, expense goes this way, and then quality goes this way, and you want to figure out how that's going to work. You want to find a sweet spot where it's not horrible and has good reviews, but it's not so expensive. And we're staying this year in 2 hotels, and then we're staying at a dorm in Oxford. So again, I know going to Oxford, you can go on to different university sites and find that. So it depends on where you're going, but there's lots of good options for staying at home.
And Katie was talking about this yesterday, encouraging faculty to use youth hostels.
Oh, absolutely.
And students who have never left Tennessee really don't know the difference between a 2-star and a 3-star hotel in London. They really don't. In particular, if they're doing what John wants them to do, which is to go out and experience the city. They just need a place to sleep. But all of those things, as far as tapping into local universities that we might have an agreement with, or that we can ask, can you trade us this or that? that's kind of in that initial conversation with me. And Joe, you and I have talked already and gone down some things with Florence, and we're always trying to retool those things. So it really, you got to be very cost conscientious on this kind of stuff. You really do.
With cost, based upon your experience, what is the best cost as far as the one that students will actually pay?
It's like, it's a great question. It comes from someone in marketing, of course. It depends on how long the program is. You know, we have 4-week programs, we have 10-day programs and 2-week programs, and we try not to be like a car salesman where we don't talk about the undercoating and stuff. Because one thing I know for sure is students have no concept of money. They really don't. Well, yeah, I'm getting financial aid. Well, how much do you pay? I don't know. They really don't know. So I think it's kind of a question of if you explain everything to them up front, that you know your tuition is going to be folded in here, and whether or not you're doing a group airfare or I'd say a sweet spot is about $4,000. Anything over $4,000 really.
Doesn't matter because we're doing something for you. Without air, over
With air, I'd say without tuition. You agree, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably about right.
And that's why, you know, when a faculty member comes to me and talks to me about taking students to Australia for, you know,
It's so awesome.
biology. Yeah, it's fantastic, but when tickets are between $2,100 and $1,800, and who knows what they're going to be in summer 2018, why don't you go to Costa Rica? You know, Southwest is flying to Costa Rica now. So you're talking about maybe $500, $600 for airfare compared to that. And also you're talking about taking students to just a few different time zones as opposed to you're really getting them out of whack. I mean, seriously, a 24-hour flight? No way. No.
And I think that the amount of money that people, so there's also issues with this because there's questions about what are the costs for students. And the cost you quote to them is going to be the program fee. That's something they're going to lock on to. And if you say that your program fee is, you know, $3,200, they freak out on that. The trouble is, I mean, the international exchange rate is really problematic because I advertise that I guess an exchange rate with the UK at 1.65 because that's what was somewhere in the package. 1.25 now. Yay, Brexit. So, I mean, you don't know what it's going to be, and there's this uncertainty about what it's going to be, and that's hard. The other thing in my program is I include almost all the meals. So if people don't see that, you can market your thing and say, I'm not going to include meals on it. There's a possibility people start to get a new trip because they won't bring enough money to pay for their meals. And then what do you do? So you got to think about what the trade-offs are for that. And I'd rather have them at least the major meals covered every day and use those as discussion points.
But I do know a lot of faculty members will encourage their students to submit the essays. They'll help. They'll look at them for them, and it really does help. It really does help.
How popular are your art places? Hong Kong, Dubai, I mean, not the London, the Paris, and all those are there.
It's tough. Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, what I always say is if a faculty member comes and talks to me and says, I say, what's the course you want to teach? This. Where do you want to go? Here. Why? Tell me why. Because, and I'm not criticizing John, because John had to use this to be pragmatic, the word trip. But the word trip drives us crazy, Katie and I, because it's trip in the sense that it's just a trip. It's a course abroad. And you guys know, it's just this intrinsic feeling you get when you're returning with these students of how they've grown. I mean, and that they just carry themselves with their shoulders back a little bit more because of this. They've seen the world, whereas they've never, ever left. Some of them never left Rutherford County. So when they get up to the airport, it's a big thing. I think, in a sense, baby steps. We do a Singapore trip, and that is tough. It's for education. The faculty member is from Singapore, so she's able to take them into just these amazing grade schools, and they experience some fantastic things. If you have the contact, Anna, I think she's going to take them to she wants to take students to South Korea. She has the contacts. If you have the contacts, like with Dubai and the concrete industry management, if you see the pictures from that program, these students did not go and they were not in their room ever. They were out pouring cement and at land places because the buildings were going up all the time. Really quite amazing. So concrete industry management the year before, built a artificial reef down in Dominican Republic. Yeah, that was a great program. So.
What was the Senegal trip?
The Senegal trip is from poli-sci, and it is phase 1 of tracing the slave trade. So he's trying to do it for the first 2 years there, and then the next phase, the second 2 years, he's going to do a program there, followed by 2 weeks in either North Carolina or South Carolina with a scholar from there. And that is so, I'm sorry for lack of a better term, that is so cool. Think about it, seriously. I mean, because when you talk to these 8 students that saw where everything originated, and then to bring them over here, and then to listen to another, that really is just amazing. Oh, I got goosebumps. And that's the kind of stuff that came from brainstorming. And we sat and talked, and I said, well, what if you did this and that? Oh, yeah, let's do this. So, 37? 3,700. Yeah.
Because the living can be pretty cheap there.
Yeah.
That makes a difference. Airfare, yeah,
The airfare is like this.
airfare is
Yeah.
expensive.
And once again, this is a program where Ali is, he's Senegalese, but still, we paid for him to go back and to make the arrangements, and he made all the arrangements, and he was very cost conscious, saying, no, come on, I'm bringing 8 students, give me a cheaper place to stay. But the quick little anecdotal story about what Ali did is when he landed in Senegal, the first thing he did is he took all the students in 2 separate cabs to his mother's house. And so they're staying out in the front yard, and his mother blessed them and welcomed them. And it's a Senegalese tradition. I thought, God, that is so cool. Yeah. So, but really amazing stuff. And if you, a couple of the faculty members do this when they come back. Actually, they've used this room. I know Jane Lim uses this room, where the students will report, and they'll invite the colleagues from the department or the college and the parents, and they talk about their trip. Oh, jeez. Shocked me with the collar. Their program. Okay? So. Anything else, guys?
Which areas do you think, in your experience, are more popular with students?
Like locations? Definitely Europe. I mean, there's no doubt.
So the England and the France and like those popular ones.
Students all have that, but we see now when it comes to cost, students are loving the concept of the Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and the Costa Rica. Costa Rica is, and there are some programs or some countries that are very student and program friendly, and they will work with you. We've had one in recording industry in Belize now for 3 years, and that's really been popular and well run, very well run. So most of the faculty that are doing a lot of these programs have gone on these kind of reconnaissance trips to. I want to make sure that if 8 students are watching you go through immigration, you know what you're doing, and you're not saying, I think this is the right way. Because as John said, you've got like 8 little ducklings behind you. Yeah. But I will say this, I've worked at several universities, but MTSU students, there's something about, and maybe it's because they're not well traveled, but they're very sweet when they're overseas, and they're so well behaved. I mean, really. We give them this stern lecture, right? You're true blue whether you're here or you're in Senegal or UK, and you can't drink even. And you have a few misbehaving, but they're really, really sweet and well behaved.
I've had good kids, even the people that were problematic, they were good kids. They were not massively misbehaving or causing problems intentionally or just disruptive. They were just, doing things that were, they were impatient or they were just had attitudes that they expected everything to be forced on hotels or, there's a couple people like that, but it was rare. It's been rare. So.
But I mean, imagine it's not like you're just teaching a 2-hour class and then the students leave. It's 24/7 for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and so it is really tough.
So, how responsible for them are you? Since they are adults and...
Yeah, so the answer is not, you've got to set the behaviors. You have to set the expectations. And if your expectation is go do whatever you want, that's bad. But if your expectation is you have some free time, go enjoy yourself, be safe, don't drink, that's, I think, okay, because they are adults, right? The thing that you find is the first day or 2, they're kind of really want to stick close to you. They don't want to go and explore. And then by day 3 or 4, they're kind of more happy to have an hour off. And then by the end of the trip, they're ready to go anywhere. Well, I have 3 hours. I can make it to Manchester. Yeah, I can. So they're pretty much off on their own at that point. Once they kind of learn the system about public transportation and how to see, they don't know what restaurants are like there. They don't know anything. So it takes them a little while to get comfortable. But yeah, I have a lot more confidence after the first day or two that they're ready to do that.
And it depends on the location.
Yes.
I mean, the UK is safer than some of our locations, and I think in particular, sometimes we're very sensitive to saying if you're taking 8 and you're looking at lodging, we want 8 women and 8 men, and then we want them to be paired up. It doesn't matter about the gender. We don't want you to go out in a cab by yourself. We just want you to kind of buddy up and use street smart.
Buddy system in the UK, absolutely. They don't go off on their own. They go off with group.
And when we do the orientation, we're surprised at the number of parents that attend, because it's a big thing for them. So
one of the things that comes up, by the way, is the discussion. And so 2 years ago, the thing that happened was the attack on Paris. And I had a bunch of students drop out at the last minute because they thought, well, Paris attack, Europe is falling apart, danger. But the fear of terrorism that people have about going overseas is irrationally high. It's not guarded. It's crazy off the scale. But you can just go through the numbers and talk about the odds and talk about there's been attacks in Chattanooga, and you can kind of bring this to home. But a lot of parents in particular really worry about their kids going overseas if there's been an attack in the last 12 months.
But also to follow up on your question, just to give you an example of how responsible are you? As John said, if you've really articulated what the rules are and you have a syllabi that lays it all out and you've gone through all the pre-departure stuff, if you say, okay, at 8 o'clock we finished our pre-day wrap-up and I'm checking out. You guys need to be in the lobby or in the front of this building tomorrow at 7:30. You close and I see no hear no evil. Come on, we remember when we were 18 to 21, right? I would have been sneaking out, but they have to be safe when they do so, and we do not expect them to drink.
Yeah, and you don't have to follow them around. You just tell them the expectations.
Yeah. But they better be there at 7:30 in the morning. I don't care how disheveled they look.
I just wondered, one of the reasons I'm interested in doing this is I did a summer program when I was in college in Europe, and they gave us a lot of rules, but it kind of boiled down to, don't get arrested.
Yeah.
But here's the conflict. That's the low bar.
Yeah. But we do have a very good protocol for dismissing a student or, punishing a student who misbehaves. And we also have a great protocol for if something does happen and the whole group has to come back, we have funding to get them out of there as quickly as possible on behalf of the university.
Is insurance an issue?
No. I mean, it's mandatory for faculty and students. They have to enroll through Katie's office.
We have a whole packet of liability paperwork that all students can
Yeah. And don't forget, all of these programs are vetted by a standing faculty committee of folks who have been connoisseurs on it, who have done these programs, and their goal is not to turn the program down. Their goal is to kind of ask you some questions to perfect the program and tweak it so that it can run. And a lot of these people have been running programs for a couple of years. So, one thing we will do when you talk to me, if you say, oh, I want to run a program here, well, if that country is already a little bit saturated, we probably will ask you to go somewhere else. Japan is a program right now, is a country that's saturated, and so we won't be doing that. So if any of you were thinking about Japan, sorry. The IEEC will probably not approve it. Okay. Anything else? All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.